If you ask anybody why you're stuck in traffic, you'll probably get answers like, because the city is too small to hold all of us, or that the infrastructure isn't enough to hold so many vehicles. And while those statements may be partially true, the solution doesn't come from where most people imagine, nor was the problem created directly by them. In this video, we are going to see the real way traffic is created, using a country that not only got stuck in traffic the same way yours did, but also solved it today so well, you probably never knew it had any. So imagine the following. Let's say you live in the 1930s in a quiet neighborhood just a few kilometers from the city center. You work in a bank, one of those grand stone buildings right in the heart of the town. It's 8 in the morning. You step outside, lock the door, and start walking down a narrow street lined with bakeries and small shops. The air smells of fresh bread. At the corner you open the tram with a crowd of people, but you still manage to get a seat. It glides past rows of houses and into the bustling city center. The journey takes maybe 15 minutes. People get on and off at every station, but on average about 80 people remain on board. The equivalent of thousands of cars. While you see other trams crossing the city and wagons on rails, because trams are the main mode of transit. You don't think about traffic, it's just not a problem. The streets are alive with people walking, children cycling to school, shopkeepers setting up their windows and the occasional hose cart driving by. Getting to work is simple, predictable and cheap. Trams connect every district. And neighborhoods are created around trams, not the other way around. Many people cycle because the only real danger is a horse. And trains take you to other cities. Everything you and other people need is close by, and everyone moves using highly space-efficient modes. That is a system that works. For now. Then the 1950s arrive. Cars slowly enter your city, getting faster and faster. And here is where the advantage of car and the oil industry really begins. The war destroyed major parts of your city, and the industries saw an opportunity. Instead of rebuilding around trams, bicycles and trains, rebuilt for cars. Vehicles were and still are very useful for cargo, but they were over-advertised as the future for everyone. This was clearly not efficient. A typical Dodge Ram 1500 takes as much space as 9 bicycles and 24 pedestrians. And this is a crazy number if you think that a lot of those vehicles are driven by a single person and usually unloaded. The car companies had everything to gain. Selling one car made them money once, but selling the idea that every adult needed their own car, that meant selling billions. They spent millions promoting stupid concepts such as jaywalking, getting people fined for crossing a public space. And they voted down every anti-car politician. All companies played along. The more people drove, the more fuel they sold. They put money into glossy ads showing happy families on empty highways, as well as many propaganda movies. Into lobbying city planners to modernize by widening streets, into campaigns that painted trams and trains as old-fashioned and slow. They didn't just sell cars, they sold a lifestyle. A promise that you could go everywhere, anytime, faster than ever. Most politicians also loved it, because building roads was visible progress. And after huge pressure, people believed it, even though the future they were promised never came, and it never will. For every tram that carried 50 to 80 people, you now had 40 to 60 extra vehicles taking up far more space. And as more roads were built, despite early knowledge, at least from the 1930s, of their inefficiency, cities sprawled outwards, towards all sides. Buildings were destroyed for parking. Neighborhoods were split apart by highways, destroying local communities. Suddenly everybody had to drive further, because jobs, shops and schools were moved out of reach of walking and cycling. Suddenly, commuting by car was not so fast, not just because of traffic, but because distances became huge. Of course, the industries benefited at every stage. The further you lived from work, the more you drove. The more you drove, the more fuel you burned. The more roads you built, the more cars needed to fill them. By the 1970s, almost all cities in the world were covered in asphalt. Now more parking spaces were needed, which meant even more land lost. And the average person had to commute even further away. Building for cars resulted in an endless sprawling loop. Today, the average American commute is about 43 kilometers, around 27 miles, and with traffic that distance can take up to an hour and a half, sometimes even 2. And yet the cycle kept going. In the 1990s, most countries had already accepted the losses. Car-favoring politicians kept making people believe that if they just built one more road or added one more lane, the goal would finally be reached, continuing the endless loop that car and oil industries were only too happy to encourage. But there was one country that didn't follow that path. By the 1980s, its citizens had fully understood the problems, and they were sick of them. They demanded change. The country of the Netherlands. Yes, you may be surprised, but this is indeed the Netherlands in the 1970s. This canal in Utrecht, destroyed to build a road. The streets, so bad that any reasonable person would think they are unfixable, but the Dutch were not reasonable. The Dutch were crazy enough that today, not only the problem has been fixed, but the cities are even better than before. And that's what makes the story so shocking. Because in the 1970s, the Netherlands looked exactly like the rest of the world. Car-choked. You'd walk down the street in Amsterdam, and the air would taste like exhaust, because everything else had been given to lanes of traffic and rows of parked cars. Children were no longer cycling to school, they were being driven, because parents saw the roads as too dangerous for anyone under the age of 18. In Utrecht, they didn't just fill in the beautiful canal to build a highway, they flattered entire blocks of historic buildings to push more cars through the city. Rotterdam, already rebuilt after bombed in World War II, was designed almost entirely around the car, with wide multi-lane boulevards cutting through what had once been walkable streets. And many scars still remain. The assumption, not just in the Netherlands but in every industrialized country, was that this was modernity, that a city without traffic jams was a city that wasn't growing. Of course, globally, the same script was playing out. In the US, cities were tearing out streetcar networks that had been moving millions of people a day for decades. In the UK, motorways were being driven straight through the hearts of historic towns. Planners demanded of making Paris a city for cars, with elevated highways and massive roundabouts replacing entire neighborhoods. The car and oil industry loved every bit of it. More cars meant more money, more cars meant more fuel, and of course more fuel made more profit. And for the average person, the logic seemed and still is obvious. If you're stuck in traffic, the road must be too small, so we build more roads. And then we get more traffic. This is just a result of induced demand. And we keep building. Every expansion feels like a short-term win, so nobody questions the long-term disaster. It's like putting a fire by pouring petrol on it. At first the flames look smaller, but then the whole building goes up. The Dutch were on the same path. By the 1970s, traffic deaths were climbing. In 1971 alone, over 3,000 people died on Dutch roads. Hundreds of them children. Cycling and taking public transit, once completely normal, was declining fast. In just a few years, Dutch streets were gone from quiet, human-scaled places to noisy, dangerous corridors of metal and fumes. By 1972, Dutch newspapers were filled with headlines about children getting killed by cars. Parents began organizing vigils and protests, standing at major intersections holding signs that read "Stop de kindermoord," "Stop the child murder." The phrase was brutal, but so were the statistics. In the city of Eindhoven, one protest blocked traffic for hours. In Amsterdam, residents dragged old furniture and garbage bins into the street to stop cars from using residential roads as shortcuts. Some were even flipping cars and riding autovrij onto them. In Utrecht, letters put onto the city hall from parents demanding that something, anything be done. At the same time, the oil crisis hit. In 1973, fuel prices quadrupled almost overnight. Dutch drivers suddenly felt that costs of freedom they've been sold. The government even imposed car-free Sundays to save fuel, which gave people a rare glimpse of their cities without the road and the smell of traffic. But the industries didn't slow down. The car manufacturers pushed fuel efficiency models as the answer. The oil companies lobbied against anything that would reduce driving. Road builders insisted the real problem was still few lanes. Meanwhile, entire neighborhoods were being gutted for road widening projects. Local shops closed as customers were pushed toward only car shopping centers. The space efficiency that made Dutch cities so pleasant was disappearing fast, It was in this environment, dangerous streets, choking congestion, skyrocketing costs and vanishing public space, that the Dutch public patience finally ran out. Now here is an important disclaimer. The way this change began in the Netherlands with street blockades, massive protests, and political standoffs may not work everywhere. In some places it could even backfire. But the end result, the Dutch approach to urbanism today, can and absolutely should work everywhere around the world. Even in the Netherlands, the path wasn't neat. Lots of early steps were messy, politically risky and sometimes even counterproductive. Yet in just 30 years, the country went from car-choked streets and dangerous neighborhoods to some of the safest, most efficient and most livable cities on earth. Small experiments only started from 1980s. Some temporary closures, a few cycle lanes, speed limits in residential streets, but no grand plan yet, just trial and error. Later though, city councils started openly saying that cars should not dominate city life. First policies limiting car access to historic centers, but towards the 1990s, still everything was really bad. Really bad bicycle lane designs, traffic calming that pushed problems elsewhere. But the key shift was taking space away from cars and giving it to people. In the mid-1990s, continuous cycling networks, more pedestrian zones, major investment in public transportation, and integration between modes were all done. And it was only about the 2000s that cycling to school became normal again. And still not every household and not in every city. By 2005, driving became a choice, not a default. And by 2010, public opinion supported human-scale streets. After the shift in mind, more ambitious projects were done. Planners started concepts such as the continuous sidewalk. And they found out it's a really great design implementing it everywhere. Now Amsterdam had led the world in cycling share. And as more years pass, Dutch cities set the standard for people-first design. In the early 2020s, Utrecht started restoring its canal. As you can see, most of the real progress happened between the last 30 and 20 years. And it didn't happen overnight. But it also didn't happen by accident. And here is the truth. Most of the world never made that change. Your city probably didn't. That's why you're stuck in traffic. Because cars are notoriously inefficient in managing space. You're stuck in traffic because every new road to relieve congestion just spreads things apart. You're stuck in traffic because parking swallows land, pushing everything further from everything else. You're stuck in traffic because your public transport, if it exists, is trapped in the same traffic jams you are stuck. You are stuck in traffic because for decades industries and politicians told you that cars were the only serious way to get around. And they made sure every alternative was removed or made inconvenient. Your city doesn't need to sprawl, and if it's gonna do it, roads are just gonna reduce density and spread things apart, skyrocketing commuting times. So if you want to sprawl, you're better off using an LRT, BRT or metro. Because those are incredibly more space efficient than cars. Until that basic pattern changes, until your city starts designing for short trips, efficient transport, and people instead of just vehicles, you'll stay stuck in traffic. Traffic isn't a mystery, it's a design choice. And right now, your city is choosing it every single day. If you watch this video until here, you must really like my content, so please subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. And if you'd like to see even more videos from mine, such as one about the city of Freiburg in Germany, the town of Houten in the Netherlands, or an island in Greece, plus watch all of my videos earlier than everybody else, you may want to support me on patreon.com/dailyfreedom. And until my next video, have a great day.